Hello, this video is going to cover all of the steps for making the cookies in your cookie kit. If you don't have a cookie kit, head to gartygoodies.com and you can snag yours today. Okay, let's get started. First, I want to talk about how you're going to set up your space. I put all my piping bags on paper towel, have my scribe and a pair of scissors nearby. Lay out my cookies. You can also decorate them right on the tray. I have my booklet nearby so I can refer to it throughout the process, and then more paper towels. Next, let's just give a couple practice squeezes. You want to hold your piping bag like you're pulling a carrot out of the ground. And then you're just going to slowly drag your icing across the paper towel. And again, just try this until you're comfortable with it. If you have way too squiggly of a line, it means you're putting too much pressure on it. And if your line is breaking, it means you're not putting enough pressure on it. The first cookie we're going to decorate is the daisy. You can do this in any color. I'm going to show it in white. The first step is simply outlining each petal, and I'm doing every other petal just in case these petals touch. What you'll see is anytime we have colors that touch, it can start to blend together. So I want to make sure that they're nicely spaced out so that we can see the definition in the petals. So then I'm just going to go ahead and flood the petals with my flood icing. Notice I did not cut that hole very big. And then use my scribe to kind of pull the icing out to give each petal some definition. Then I'm going to go back and outline the other petals. Now you can do these right away since they're not touching, but if your cookies spread slightly, then they might be touching, so you might want to wait until the first petals dry before going back to outline the second set of petals. Go ahead and flood those in. You do not need to wait at all between outlining and flooding your cookie. You can do that right away because your outline consistency is so thick it will act like a barrier. If you made your flood consistency too thin, you might find that it's starting to run off and you might want to go back and mix some new icing. Then we're going to go ahead and pipe our yellow center. Again, you might want to wait till the white petals dry a bit. We're moving on to the coffee cup cookie. We're going to do the pink one with the daisies on it. I'm using my outline consistency mauve color, and then right away I'm going to go in and flood with my mauve flood color. And I'm going to try to do this a little bit quickly because we are going to pipe right on that wet icing. So we're not going to let it dry at all between steps. And I'm going to take my piping consistency and make my little daisies. Now these can be as freehand as you want because they kind of have that style to it. But I'm using the piping consistency because I'm getting a little bit more definition. You could also use flood consistency if you wanted. It will sink right into the pink flood background because it's not dry. Then we're going to go back and take our yellow and give it some little yellow centers. And then I felt like it needed something more, so I went ahead in with the peach and added some little dots. And I know that's not on the original design, but I was feeling spontaneous. For all of these cookies, go ahead and make them your own. Add your own touch to them. That's what makes this fun. Now we're going to go back and outline just the top part of the cookie cup because it doesn't touch the pink. And we're going to flood that, and then we're going to let that dry about 5 minutes before we outline the next portion. So even though it looks like I'm doing it right away, it's actually been a couple minutes before I outline the bottom part of the coffee cup, because these colors or these two parts touch each other, and I want to make sure there's definition. All right, we're going to go on to the next coffee cup. I had a little bit of trouble. I had to scrape my first one and redo, so just left that in there to show you that I'm not perfect either, because I wanted it was uneven. So I'm going to outline my 2 portions in orange and then go in and flood those 2 portions right away. And then you're going to want to let that dry for about 5 minutes. You can run a fan, like a table fan on them to have them dry just a little bit faster. Once those are dry, then you can go back and, you can pipe your top of your coffee cup too because that doesn't touch. So you can pipe all 3 of these sections right away and then let that dry. Then you'll go back and pipe the middle portion, the cup holder portion, and the top of the coffee cup. So again, we just let that dry. You don't see it in the video because of the magic of editing, but anytime you see 2 colors or 2 portions of a design next to each other, there's always been dry time in between because we want those portions to have definition. Then I'm going to wait for that white to dry before I go in and pipe the word coffee. You can pipe whatever word you want. Know that doing handwriting is really challenging, so give yourself some grace and you might want to practice it a few times first. Up next is the t-shirt design. We're going to outline in yellow and then flood right away in yellow. I also want to mention, and I should have mentioned this before, this is all sped up about 4 times. So I go much slower than this in reality, so please take your time when you are piping. Once the yellow is slightly dry, we're going to go back in and create our little freehand daisy here and pipe and flood our daisy right away. Notice there was some dry time between the petals so that we could get that definition, and add the center of our daisy. And then we're going to go in and outline our t-shirt just to add a little bit more fun detail to this. I also want to mention for this cookie cutter, I did squeeze the metal cutter before cutting out my shapes, so it had more of a point to it instead of a straight. So if you're noticing that my cookie is shaped different than your cutter, you're just going to want to squeeze your cutter a little bit when you cut out the dough. Now we're doing our last cookie, which is my favorite one, the little tie-dye cookie. We're going to use all flood icing to create these little arches, and you want to kind of work quickly because we don't want any of this to dry too quickly. We want to do all of this while the cookie is still wet. So we're going in and flooding the different portions here, and then you're going to take your scribe tool and run it through that icing, basically kind of marking it all up. And this is why you have to do it right away so that it doesn't dry. I shake my cookies so that the design fills in. Just make sure you don't get any icing on your fingers. Swirl it at the bottom. You could also swirl it at the top for a more traditional tie-dye too. And then I'm just going to go back in with my piping icing, my outline icing, and pipe the definition in the t-shirt, the different details in the t-shirt, so that it looks like a cute little knotted t-shirt, just like the other t-shirt. So this is the last cookie. I know I went through that really fast, but I just wanted to give you an idea. Please feel free to have fun with this, experiment with different designs, come up with your own, and of course, tag me if you post them on social media because I would love to see your creation.